Lots to talk about. Lots happened over the weekend, and I know this much that you got the convergence of the SEC women's basketball tournament going on right now. You've got the men's basketball. You got a tight race there. We're going to talk about all of it. We got Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, on. He was at the banquet last night. Claude Felton, legendary sports information director at University of Georgia, was inducted into the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame. A well-deserved honor. Bring back SIDs. Who needs these media relations directors? SIDs were great people like Claude Felton. Dave Tompkins in the Low Country joins us, and Franz Beard as well from GatorBaitMedia.com. Get pen and paper handy because here we come.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown here with you. Dave Tompkins joins us over in the Low Country in Beaufort, South Carolina, and Tony Barnhart will be on here with us in just a minute. And Dave, I know the thing I want to address, and you and I both do when Tony comes back on, is the state of the NCAA. Big case happened, I guess, Friday with what's going on with Tennessee and Virginia, and both of them are involved in that suit with the NCAA about what can go on with NIL or what have you. And I think that there are going to be repercussions that come from that. And your initial reaction from that, because my phone, we didn't do Savant Saturday. A lot of people going, where are y'all? But the point is, there was action taken in the court system. How much longer will the NCAA be around before we get to Tony?
Yeah, it's to me, it's like, growing up in grade school science, you learn about potential energy and kinetic energy. And there's been so much potential energy. I see it really starting to convert to kinetic energy now. And I think this is the first of many. I don't know if this will be the Brown versus Board of Education, but it's on the way. And I'm going to be very curious to see how this particular legal action plays out.
Yeah, and Tennessee and Virginia, like a lot of other states, just took action because NIL, I am not a lawyer, but both of us do know this. We know what antitrust laws are. They were brought in September of 1990 by Senator John Sherman. Yes, you know who his dreaded brother was. May he be in an eternal inferno. But bottom line, John Sherman put those laws into place in 1890. They were to prohibit restriction of free trade and commerce. So there's no way. The Supreme Court's already ruled 9-0 about what's going to happen. So now this Tennessee case was interesting, involving a flight from California for Nico Lamaliva. That's how I'll pronounce it. I cannot get it right. All these guys with these unpronounceable names, they will continue to drive me crazy. But I think that's what happened. They just said, well, that's one law to the next. And the NCAA has no subpoena power, Dave. So I wonder when we're going to have the commissioners and all like that come about. Tony Barnhart's with us right now. And Tony, good morning and welcome. And Dave and I were kind of getting the fire going about the NCAA and that case. And also, let's talk about your book, The 19 of Green, which is a great book that's out there. But I want to get your thoughts on initially what you took away from Friday's news about the Tennessee and Virginia cases with the NCAA.
The guys, this makes it very clear as to what the courts are going to do. And here's what I mean by that. for the longest time, the NCAA has been able to say, hey, we're only doing what our membership wants us to do. We are putting in the rules and policies that they ask for. We are enforcing the rules that they ask for. And that has always been the standard defense. But what the courts are telling us now is saying, we don't care. We don't care about your rules. The bottom line is this is not about the NCAA versus some other entity. The fact is the client being the athlete, has all of the leverage here, and we're going to enforce their rights. And so the NCAA can't say, well, listen, our membership wanted this rule that said for the transfer portal. They wanted that rule that says you have to sit out a year after you get one free bite at the apple. And the courts are saying you can't make those kind of rules because those rules restrict the ability of the individual. And so I think you're right. I think there are going to be huge repercussions from this, but it's yet another reminder that the NCAA is alive. Their existence as the regulatory body of college athletics, I think their days are numbered.
Yeah. Dave, that
let's just
reaction
hope
from
that in
what
their
Tony
final
said.
days of having jurisdiction that they can prevent these court storming things. That was it was sad to watch Filipowski get injured after in the aftermath of the Wake Forest beating Duke.
People have told everybody, they finally did it in SEC basketball. Okay, and they made the rule: you get punished, you get fined, and all that. And I know I've worked in the ACC for a long time. I understand the tradition. I've been in the middle of the court for a Duke Carolina game when the court was stormed. I've been there. But the fact of the matter is, people are going to get hurt, and they're lucky that what happened the other night was not a lot worse than it was. So the bottom line, they got to put a series of fines in, and ultimately, and I hate to do this because I hate to quelch the natural enthusiasm of the college game because it's what we love so much. But you're going to have to put in a series of pretty serious sanctions to prevent this, because we can't have something like this again. We certainly can't have it without some repercussions.
Yeah, and the look on John Shire's face on the sidelines, he was doing a post-game interview in that Duke-Wake Forest game, was I'd never seen a coach like jump out on the floor like that. It was like, Dale Brown jumping out in that Tennessee LSU game in the SEC tournament. Tony, when I was in Charlotte a couple of weeks ago to see my son, I want to ask you something. That's an awesome city. I mean, it's like my wife said after 10 years in Atlanta, she goes, it's what Atlanta would be with controlled growth. And there you've got the SEC network. I didn't see it, but I saw the ACC headquarters downtown next to Duke Energy, which, by the way, is one of my favorite stocks over the years. It's just solid as a rock. But, man, as big a city as it is, it might be the cleanest city. It's what Memphis used to be. It's an awesome city. The SEC network, do you ever see them moving to Atlanta?
Here's the issue. They talked about moving to Atlanta originally, but the fact of the matter is their ESPN already owned land, an area where they had ESPNU. That's where ESPNU began, is in that complex in Charlotte. And they said, they could do it without any cost up front. Now, if you want to pick out a prime piece of real estate in downtown Atlanta, spend about $8 or $10 million, absolutely. But they didn't felt it was necessary. There
you go.
At the time. And now that ESPN has all the inventory of SEC football, I don't see it makes a whole lot of sense to move.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Dave, when you think in Birmingham, they pay $1, $1 for that lease, and the Pac-12 we read last year was paying $8 million and change to rent in downtown San Francisco. And if you ever watch the Pac-12 network, they play one game over and over and over, and that's the 1982 Stanford-Cal game. Dave, jump back in here. You spent some time out there. You know what I'm talking about.
I lived in the Bay Area from 1990 when I went out to Stanford to 2007. And way back then in 1990, Stanford football was fantastic. Dennis Green was our coach. We had touchdown Tommy Vardell, Glenn Milburn, Darian Gordon, Oh gosh, Christian McCaffrey's dad, Ed, and that was just great football, great basketball with Mike Montgomery. All that's gone now. It's really sad to be a Stanford fan and to see that. We still have our girls that play great basketball. I really enjoyed watching Caitlin Clark get her triple-double yesterday. I think her 5th of the season. But thanks to NIL, we've learned one thing she can't do, which is sing. She was on a State Farm commercial and did Like a Good Neighbor, and unfortunately, Caitlin can't carry a tune. But so she's not perfection.
Yeah, I love that, Tony. Now next step, we've had Steve Shaw, who I absolutely think he's wonderful. You know him on this show a number of times, and I respect him because I knew an official growing up, Joe Pipkin from Memphis, for 33 years. And what I loved about, I knew him since I was a little kid, and he's gone now, but he was a friend of my parents. He did big-time Southern Independent games, and he would get me, say, I would see him at a game if I was on the sidelines. He would not even speak to me because he knew I was an Auburn, and I always laughed. He goes, don't take that personal, Rob Jr. And I was like, don't. But I respect that. I respect what Steve Shaw and those people do because I've been out in public and I've seen him, and you can't. It's like my grandfather was a judge. You can't. There's a line that you can't cross. We've got to keep, because what they're doing. This is just my opinion. They're getting it right on targeting, and we don't need to lose Steve Shaw. If we don't have an NCAA, what happens to him and his group? Because they're working their butts off to do things better.
Yeah, and I think you can have a separate officials association. You don't need the bottom line, Rob. And this is going to be harsh to say. They don't need the NCAA. They just don't.
Agreed.
They can create their own organization, their own enforcement structure. All of these things they can do, and they can do it much more efficiently. Now, you still got to figure out what you're going to do about the basketball tournament, because the NCAA does put on a nice basketball tournament.
Yes.
You got to give them that. And so I don't know what the ultimate answer is. I just know that what we have now, and this is no revelation of any, what we have now is not sustainable. It is not sustainable, and we have started the process. I believe that Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, commissioner of the Big Ten, they've started the process, and how long it's going to take, I don't know. But what we have now, as we've seen in the courts, is clearly not going to work.
Yeah, and there's only so many times you can ask people, Dave, for money, season tickets, priority seating, now NIL. I mean, what about what people give to charities and their church and, oh my God, their own children? That's where I see this one. It's kind of crazy.
Well, I think the NCAA, to Tony's point, I think the NCAA has a soft landing, which is retain the rights to March Madness. Women's March Madness, thanks to Caitlin and many others, is getting. I learned yesterday that the Big Ten women's tournament is completely sold out, which is, I don't think, ever happened in a conference in women's basketball ever. And so that property, March Madness for women, is going to get bigger and bigger. So they've got two platforms they can monetize very, very well. And if I were the NCAA, I'd hold on to that and then let the rest go, because otherwise it's going to be an embarrassing ending for them, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it will be. Tony, next question. You mentioned, I loved seeing that because everything that I've ever learned about the media came from David Housel, Reba Gulledge, and Buddy Davidson at Auburn, and Mel Pulliam and Dwight Johnson and Ralph Jordan Jr., just some of the ass chewings, let's be honest, that I got from David Housel about when you're in that press box, you are representing Auburn University. Right. You cannot cheer, you cannot clap, you can smile, and you can offer to do things for people. But I mean, I love that guy. I needed that, and I still revere that. And Dave and Brendan, Tony still wears a coat and tie to the games out of reverence to one of the iconic journalists, Furman Bisher, who I think wrote into his 90s, which everybody should do. But talk about Claude Felton last night. That is absolutely awesome, his honor.
Well, the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame has a banquet every year to bring in their new class and honor the old class, because all of us who are in the Hall of Fame are asked to come back, and we have a dinner, and it's a beautiful. beautiful event. Claude Felton, who's been was the sports information at Georgia for 45 years, one of my dearest friends.
Yeah.
For years and years, we've been trying to get Claude to go into the Hall of Fame. He says, no, this time's not right. And time's not right. Because Claude's job, in his mind, and he's right, was to get other people into the Hall of Fame, not himself into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But finally, and he said, well, I'll let you know when the time is right. Well, when he announced his retirement, I said, aha. So, and so it was a wonderful night. There was a great crowd out there with his wife, Kathy, his children, his grandchildren. It was a wonderful, and Maria and I were just thrilled to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an incredible honor. Dave, I don't know if you are familiar. Tony has written a book about his experience growing up in small town Georgia when we integrated sports, called the 19 of Green. Tony, talk about this. Yeah, it's a great book. And Dave, jump in. I'm kind of
I've always wanted to ask Tony a question. Of course, I've been a huge fan all the years watching ESPN and CBS. The worst memory of my childhood was not 17-16. It was 21-0 in the Junkyard Dogs when my Tide got beat. John Forney and Doug Layton with the call for Alabama. Doug Layton starts cussing on the radio. And I've always wondered, was that your senior year or just after you graduated?
I had just graduated in June and got my first job at a little newspaper in South Carolina. And I asked my new boss to make me one promise: let me go back home for the Georgia-Alabama game in September. And he said yes. And so I was at that game, and it was here's one of the great stories about that game. I had a bunch of because I just graduated, I had a bunch of friends on the team, and the town was filling up early. And it used to be you could sit on the railroad tracks on the north end of the stadium and look into the stadium, and people would sit on those tracks to get a great perspective of the game. Well, Thursday before the game, Georgia had a walkthrough at Sanford Stadium. And when they got there at 4:00 in the afternoon, people were already, this is Thursday, people were already on the tracks on Thursday. And one of my buddies on that team, Joe Tereshinsky, was a center. He said, that's when I knew we were going to win. And they did 21-0.
Yeah,
it was not that close. I mean, it was just a complete beatdown. It was the worst memory of my childhood.
Tony, I've got one of my friends who grew up in Atlanta, and his brother owned a bar in Athens, which is kind of a wild combination. When he goes to bed at night, he plays James Brown's Junkyard Dogs, every night before he goes to bed. He is a serious dog. Jeff Boone, I'm talking about. Talk about your book and how the sales are going and the reaction, because it is a story that you cannot tell enough.
Well, one of the things the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame does is on Saturday, before the banquet on Saturday night, they have what they call a fan fest, and all the Hall of Famers are asked to come back and sign autographs. It's a huge, huge turnout, a lot of fans, and it was just. It was just special, and we had a chance to sign some books and do that night. The book has gone very well, but during that event, a gentleman came up to me and says, I was in high school at exactly the time that you were, and we went through the exact same thing of integrating the schools, and the fact that what I tell people, this book is not about football. It's about the fact that 53 years after we played our last game together, Charles Turner, my first black friend in my life, it remains one of my very, very best friends. And today, when we get together, we don't talk about football. We talk about grandchildren. He's got 6, and I've got 2, and that's what we talk about. And so it was a wonderful event on Saturday, and the response to the book has been really good.
Yeah, well, we need more people reading, Dave. I think that would be. I always tell people, reading, when you go in someone's house, it used to be when you went in their house, what did you look for? The size of their library. We need more of that, Dave.
Well, I can't wait. I can't wait to read the book. The integration was a big part of my childhood with John McKay and Sam Bam Cunningham coming to Legion Field, destroying Alabama, and then Coach Bryant got his wish over Governor Wallace, and a really important part of our history that needs to be told more and more often. And so I really commend Tony for the book. I can't wait to read it. This is really, it's an important part of our history, and it needs to be told the way it happened. And I know that's the way the book's going to tell the story. So I'm super excited to read it.
Yeah. And I don't think, Tony, there's any doubt. I mean, and the book is up here on the screen right now. People can, Brendan, they can hit the QR code and okay. And
yeah, we've had a couple of people hit it already.
Cool. And I think the bottom line is, Tony, you as a writer, and I say this over and over, and we have an intern on here who's a sophomore writer for the Auburn Plainsman. A couple of weeks ago, Maury Gaston, one of my dear friends, took him to breakfast, the back booth at Chappie's with David Housel.
Yep,
and he got to hold court, and he listened a lot. There's a picture of David doing this, talking to him. But we need writers. Do you get the opportunity? I'm sure a lot of people ask for it, to mentor young writers anywhere, because it's so important. And Claude Felton, even though he's retired, bring back SIDs. I love the SID. The SID was like Sheriff Taylor, at any hour of the day, if you called them and you needed something, they got it done for you. We need that.
Classic example of that with Claude. With Claude Felton, I can't remember the name, but it was a big. I think it was the Georgia-Tennessee game of 1998 when Tennessee was on the way to the national championship. They came to Athens and won. And four of my friends who are national writers from L.A., Boston, Chicago, and New York, they decided at the last minute they were going to come to the game. I said, call Claude. They called Claude. When they got there, the credentials were set to go. Claude had carved out a spot in the press box just for those four guys. And he took a member of his staff and says, okay, staff member, you are in charge of these four guys. All right.
Yeah.
Give them everything they need. And because Claude, the opportunity to get a lot of national people into Sanford Stadium was a big deal. But Claude didn't say, well, what are you doing calling me the 2 days before the game? I can't. No. He made it happen. He made sure a staffer was assigned to those four guys, and they got everything they needed. That's what sports information directors are supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question about it, Dave.
Well, speaking of, great works of literature and great movies, Saturday at 4:00 Eastern, switching back and forth between the North Carolina UVA game and the Alabama-Kentucky game, I felt like Sybil. The split personalities. You talk about. Yeah. I mean, those were two very different basketball games going on at the same time. One where I think where the combined field goal percentage was about 17%, and then the other one was about 73%.
Yeah, yeah. No, but, I love it.
I think Kentucky. My theory all along is that Kentucky's going to make they're either going to get bounced in the first round or they're going to make a deep run, and they certainly showed signs of the ability to make a deep run with the way they played Saturday at Rupp.
Bottom line, Tony, I agree with what he said, and I was that Virginia North Carolina game. You started out in the ACC covering basketball up there, and that was Virginia went 20 from the 17-18 mark of the first half down to 3 minutes and 2 seconds. That's about 14 minutes and change. They missed 22 of 23 field goal attempts.
I've not gotten to see a whole lot of basketball this year, but I am. Wes Durham's a good friend of mine, does ACC basketball, and Virginia apparently is boo awful when it comes to trying to score. But Tony Bennett's not always. He's not a guy that scores a lot of points anyway.
Yeah.
But this is like historically bad offense, and so that's. I found that surprising.
Yeah, John Paul Jones normally has that mojo on the visiting teams, and Carolina hasn't won there since 2012, I believe. But the home team can't score there now. And they're even worse on the road. So I don't foresee a big run in March for Tony Bennett's team, even though he is a fantastic coach, and yes, I love his style. I think he can. I think he gets more out of his players than perhaps anyone in college basketball.
Definitely, Tony Barnhart. Before you go, one last thing: the state of college football, the Greg Sankey getting together with the Big Ten, your takeaway from that, what do you think will happen? Because it's not sustainable, I don't think, to keep asking people this NIL. Nick Saban, honestly, this is my opinion. I think he left because he had a bunch of kids coming in there just beating on his door, not about how can I be a better player or a better person, but about gimme, especially for those that hadn't even done anything. Right. Man, don't ask your dad for allowance if you hadn't cut the grass.
Well, Rob, you point out something very significant, is that how many times can you go back to the same people financially? We need more, we need more, we need more. They're just going to get tired of it. So listen, I'm already paying a premium to get the tickets to begin with. I'm giving a lot, but that's why there's some sanity has got to be brought to this. But the problem is the courts have no sympathy whatsoever. The fact that these rules create a hardship for the implementation of college athletics. The courts are saying, as my daddy used to say, son, that's not a me problem, that's a you problem. Okay. And it's up to you.
I love that.
You need to fix the problem. But the courts have basically said, guys, we don't care. Okay. This is your problem. This is your mess. You need to clean it up and don't ask us to bail you out.
Yeah. Well, I know in the financial services industry, there are limits on commissions and what you can charge and bank, loan rates and everything like that. That's why the term loan shark came about. That's kind of what's got to change. But Tony, look, as always, I want to tell you how much we appreciate you taking time to join us this morning and letting people know how they can follow you and all the great work that you're doing, and look forward to your next visit always. And folks, buy this book, The 19 of Green, QR code. It was up on the screen. Lift weights with your brain. Read. Quit watching TV all the time.
Well, I appreciate that. And you can do it on the QR code. You can also get it on Amazon. And it has been a labor of love, because it has been a way for us to stay in touch with all these guys, and we were very pleased with the way the book turned out. Absolutely.
And then the media guides.
The media guides, TMG College Sports. All you got to do is do a search on TMG College Sports. So it's si.com/college/TMG. And my buddy Mark Blaushin and Herb Gould, we've been writing for that website for about 4 or 5 years now. And so.
All right. Absolutely love it. Have a great one. Look forward to the next time.
Okay, guys. Thanks.
You bet. Dave, don't you remember Brendan being the son of a great sports writer, but going on a Sunday morning to the local newsstand and buying a stack of newspapers just to read. And I thought about that this weekend, because my sisters went to a small girls finishing school, Highlands College up in Roanoke, Virginia. Oh, yeah. And all their friends, W&L, I knew some of the VMI guys where my grandfather and his father and everybody else went. And then a lot of their friends were at UVA. So I got into following Ralph Sampson in the late 70s in Virginia, Lee Raker, Jeff Lamp, all those guys from Trinity High School in Louisville. The UVA-UNC basketball game was a big deal to me growing up, and it still is. You're a basketball junkie. What I love about you is you've been all over the place after you did your time at West Point, 5 years in Germany. College basketball is my love. We can't. I love it. It's something. I love football, but God, I love basketball too.
Oh, I love this time of year. We're coming into March. Friday is March 1st. March Madness, and it goes right to the Masters and then right to the Derby. This is the best time of the year. With college football fall being a close second. Now I know that most of the audience is college flip flop here. That college football is number one, but for me this is my special time of year. I love those old UVA UNC games. Back then in the ACC they can only send one team to the tournament, and so talk about the ACC really the regular season really mattering in the tournament, the conference tournament in Greensboro mattering. And all those years, the great Maryland teams not being able to go to the NCAA. That's changed now. I think changed for the better, but it's still, when you got UVA, UNC, and then I think, I guess not this Saturday, but next Saturday, Cameron Indoor, Duke, UNC. That's just basketball at its finest. But back to the SEC, I'm super excited about the SEC tournament coming up. I think let me look at my look. I think Ole Miss now is kind of on the bubble. I think they're probably still last four in, but we're probably not going to get quite as many teams into the tournament as we originally thought, but we're still going to get as many as we ever have. And I'm real curious to see, who's going to win the SEC tournament, who's going to win the regular season, who's going to win the SEC tournament, and who's going to advance the farthest in the big dance. I think we'll get 3 in the Sweet 16. Brendan's team, Florida, is really coming on, playing great basketball now. I think we can get 2 in the Elite Eight and 1 in the Final Four.
Well, you look at Tennessee and Alabama, most people think have the chance to make a deep run, the deepest run. But Kentucky, they're always out there. Just like I was concerned when they played Auburn last Saturday, they're still Kentucky. They're the 6-foot diamondback rattlesnake that is still out there. They're John Calipari ripped apart by the Kentucky fan base, but they're loaded with talent. Okay. Auburn, the way they played Saturday. Aiden Holloway, been struggling, the 5-star freshman out of California. Hits 5 3-pointers. Top to bottom, SEC, you rank it, it's got to be in a battle with the Big 12 or the Big East.
I think so. I think in terms of just the quality of teams, and if you had an index and which conference has the highest index, I think this year it might even be the SEC. I think the Big East might go do better in the tournament. I think UConn's the best team. I think UConn has the best coach, Danny Hurley, best program in UConn. I think Shaka Smart's going to take Marquette really far. I think Creighton's a sleeper. So I think the Big East might, have teams advance the farthest, but I think just from top to bottom, I think the SEC is maybe a whisker stronger than the Big 12 this year. And I love that. I mean, basketball has gotten very, very relevant in the SEC, kind of like it was in the 70s. John Ferguson and Joe Dean calling the action.
Well, those guys were the best. I mean, and I think that if you look at the LSU, look at them pushing up. I mean, there's everybody except Missouri, and they should be better next year with 3 of the top 100 players in the country coming.
And that's a good basketball program. Missouri's, Norm Stewart going way back. They've always had a good basketball program. Worst memory was that 21-0 beatdown. But one of the best memories of growing up in Birmingham was the first year of the SEC tournament, which was held in Birmingham. And my dad was an executive at American Cast Iron Pipe, where Maury still works, and we got tickets, courtside tickets. And I the junkie that I am, I was there for every minute of every game of that tournament, and that was just an indelible memory of my childhood. And to Tony's book, another indelible memory was, growing up in Mountain Brook. Back then, we were unfortunately all one color, but I used to caddy at Shoal Creek, and so I'd be the token pale guy at Shoal Creek in the caddy house.
Wait. You were a caddy, Dave? I knew you and I had a kindred, connection here, because I was a caddy. Like 15 summers of a caddy. So you and I mean, but I 4-caddied, and we did foursomes, and because we were at a mountain course called Castle Pines in Colorado. It was a little different.
I love it.
Lupa.
When I 4-caddied, I can never see the ball in flight. So there's and usually the other caddies knew it.
Yeah, I used to tell him. I said, I'm like a Plains Indian out here, man. I just, it's off the tree, off the squirrel head, and then you're really smart. You keep a couple spares in your pockets from their bag, and then you'll be like, oh, it's right here. God, what a lucky day you had.
We got a serious scratch golfer, born and raised in Gainesville, Florida. And anytime you talk to Franz Beard, doesn't matter what day it is, just another day in paradise. I like these comments, people. The Iron Duke, Franz Beard, is on with us right now. Franz, You didn't watch any basketball over the weekend, did you?
No, of course not. Of course not.
How you doing?
Well, here's what I got to say. Alabama is they're in deepest due right at this moment. When you look at who they close with, their last 4, they are 11-3, going to be lucky. I think they'll finish out maybe 13-5, but they've got rough sledding. Tennessee's I think Tennessee is in the best shape to win the SEC. And believe it or not, the Florida Gators are actually, if 13-5 can do it, Florida could get there. It's entirely possible that Florida could get there. It's also entirely possible Kentucky could get to 13-5. If they play the way they did Saturday, and here's the big thing, the big Serbian kid, Ivicevic, you saw what he could do. If they can get him to play that way every game, Kentucky can make the Final Four. Kentucky could win it. They got more talent than anybody.
Yeah.
And then going to the Big Ten, a point Franz makes a lot. So Ohio State beat Michigan State at the buzzer. So I think that puts 26 Big Ten teams in the tournament.
38.
Yes.
38.
38.
38. 14 school league with, and they'll get 38 bids. In fact, they'll give 4 to Purdue alone.
Well, Dave Tompkins,
Purdue the number 1 seed in every region.
Zach Edey gets a bid by himself.
Yes.
Purdue.
You're
Purdue
right.
is a one-horse pony. One pony, whatever you call it.
One trick pony.
One trick pony.
That's it. There you go.
That's what I'm here for.
Brendan's on his game.
You know
today.
what? That's what
I
I'm
did
here
that
for.
intentionally just to bring it, just to see
Show my genius.
if the caffeine was working, and it is. Purdue's got the big guy. They don't have outside shooting. They don't have any quickness or athleticism. I'll tell you what, they're gonna get with some team like Creighton that has a big guy who can run, and Zach Edey is going to look like a brontosaurus out there, and there is a reason he's not in the NBA this year, and that is he is a brontosaurus. Now you look at the good teams have big guys that can run. Donovan Clingan, for example, he is 7'2". Watch him run the floor. He is a gazelle. At 7'2" and 260, he can flat out run the floor. You watch Zach Edey and you time him with an hourglass.
So true. And they lost Fairleigh Dickinson last year in the first round. They probably won't do that again. But I don't see Purdue going very far. I like Matt Painter. I think he's a good coach. But they just as the seasons wear on, they just look less and less athletic. And I think that always exposes itself in the tournament.
That's Purdue is like that. Wisconsin, made it to a couple of Final Fours. They always had at least one guy that could slash. They had a lot of big, slow white guys, and then they had the black guy that could. Hey, watch me! Boom! I can dribble. I can shoot. I can even dunk. And
Tony Bennett's father is the Virginia coach. Isn't that his dad that was the coach at Wisconsin for a long time?
And then Bo Ryan was the one that took them to I think their last Final Four may have been 2015.
Yeah,
that's right. Because Florida eliminated them in 2017 with Cheech shot heard around the world at the buzzer, and then the Gators figured out a way to choke against South Carolina, a game they should have won. Mike White went into his prevent offense. And
no, Franz, wait a minute. We have not even said this yet. Now, we acknowledged it yesterday. We acknowledged it Friday. But there's a guy on this show on Hollywood Squares Monday morning sidelines version who had a birthday yesterday. Happy birthday to Brendan Martin. Happy birthday, my man.
Yes, indeed.
21 again. And you know what?
Yep.
All I want, Dave, is to go to the Kentucky Derby for my 50th birthday. I'm 50 today officially.
Oh, you turned 50 yesterday?
I turned
Okay.
50
All right.
yesterday. And I've never been to the Derby, and I really want to go. So I'm just gonna straight up hit you up on the show, be like,
okay,
how do I get to the Derby? I mean, Franz will drive me, which is fine. He doesn't mind.
I've been there,
and I'm sure you have. And I just, I'm no longer just putting it out there. I planted the seed, and I am like miracle growing that seed, man. I've got to get to the Derby before I'm done. So I'm 50 now. There's not a lot of time left.
all right.
Oh, I was there
the
when they
gatekeeper
had
up
this-
there.
I was there when they had
Wonderful
this little
lady
show
named Casey. She's a UK grad and was actually on the dance team when she was at in Lexington. But she's now the gatekeeper, and it is going to be a great Derby. 150, the 150th running this year.
I know.
I was there when this little show pony named Secretariat did pretty good.
God, how cool was that,
1973.
Franz? Yeah. How cool was that to be there? Hey, and you know what I've got to say, Franz Beard, he's a modern day George Plimpton, member of the Bon Voyant. We've got to get Franz an ascot to start wearing on the show because, I mean, he's a great writer. He's experienced a ton of incredible events, and we put this group together. I mean, we could definitely have fun at the 150th running of the Roses. That's going to be a big event.
It was like when Plimpton and Norman Mailer went to Kinshasa, Zaire, to see the Rumble in the Jungle. Ali Foreman.
Wow.
Mary Prankster's going to Louisville.
God,
I didn't see that, but I saw Ollie Frazier up in New York, and that was something, And Joe Frazier was from Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, and what people don't realize was he spent weeks in the hospital after that because he took such a pounding on his kidneys. His kidneys never worked the same afterward. In fact, he died of kidney disease. And that was all from that one fight. Ali pounded him. And if you ask me, Ali won the fight, but I don't think the judges wanted him to win it. Frazier put up a great fight. Make no mistake about it. That's not taking anything away from Joe. He put up a great fight. It was a great interview, but let's face it, Ali was the best.
Yeah.
And now you've turned over to the Pandora's box of the Ali junkie here. But I thought Ali won the first fight. He clearly won the second fight, and in Manila, boy, that was a toss up. I thought Frazier just. I mean that fight. Watch it now, and it's amazing those two guys lived from that fight. I mean that was
both of them just totally beat each other down.
Now's a good time to say something about one of our sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com. And Camp Lee, my friend, this is the first of 3 locations in Memphis, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis, open Monday through Friday, 5 a.m., 7 p.m., Saturdays, Sundays, 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 15 3-minute rounds, weights, calisthenics, punch in the bag, awesome workout. 48 people in the classes, elite level instructors. I do it. I love it. It will get you in the best shape of your life, mentally and physically. rumbleboxinggym.com. Check them out on our website. Also, Friday we'll be in Oxford, Mississippi, home of the Ole Miss Rebels, at the new opening of the Vitamin Shop. Justin Ross and his partner are going to be opening up a second location. So we'll be there Friday. Currently, they're at 5338 Goodman Road, Olive Branch, Mississippi. And they're open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Check them out on the website. They've always got specials, but what they got really, people that know what they're talking about, they'll sell you the right products. The Vitamin Shop, you got one body, take care of it. And also, spring is in the air. ECS House Industries, Chad House. Check them out at houseindustriesinc.com. Wastewater management treatment, that is critically important. The Bella Roller, the pulverizer, the Better Chopper. They also make the aerators for Catfish Farm. All of our sponsors we're blessed to have. If you like catfish, check out houseindustriesinc.com. All right, guys, we got about 15, 16 minutes here on this new 1 hour format for everybody. How excited is everybody about the ending to this SEC basketball race? And I'm going to start with you, Dave, and just kind of bounce it around 30 seconds or less. What do you think? Which team will hoist up the regular season trophy? And which is more important, winning the regular season or winning the tournament, winning both? Or what do you think?
I think Tennessee will be the regular season champion.
I do too.
I think Kentucky will be the SEC tournament champion. And I think Kentucky, if they don't lose in the first round, the first weekend, I think Kentucky will advance the farthest.
Franz Beard.
I've got to believe that Tennessee is in the best shape of anybody with the way they ended. However, Rick, Slick Rick from Hick, he has this habit of getting to the Elite Eight, and all of a sudden, they become lemmings and they go leaping off the cliff.
Yeah.
And, Calipari, I know he's gotten a lot of criticism this year, but he's brought these young guys along well. And he's got, I think, you can talk about any freshman you want to, but they've got the best freshman duo in the country. When Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham and Antonio Reeves are on the court at the same time, you throw in Ivicevic and one of the other big guys like Trey Mitchell, and that team can, as Dave said, can go the farthest. They could win it.
Yeah.
I mean, Kentucky fans are probably, they've lost 8 ball games this year, and they're thinking, oh my God, Adolph Rupp, it took him 5 years to lose 8,
Yeah. Well, he was there for 5 decades too. So, Dave, we're going to Nashville for the SEC tournament. What they call the Kentucky fans, y'all know this, Catville, and Catlanta. Their fan base, it's unbelievable. You lived in Louisville for many years, Dave, and you think about that momentum that you get. I'm with you. Now, Auburn, Tennessee, Wednesday. What do you think happens there? Auburn lately win 1, lose 1. They've only been blown out this year badly at Florida. And that was kind of the wake up of Florida. They were leading the nation in rebounding. Here they go. But can Auburn go into Thompson Bowling and get the win Wednesday night?
I don't think so. And I love, as you know, I love Auburn basketball and I love Bruce Pearl. I just don't see it happening. Tennessee is they're strong at home. They play that lockdown defense. They've got enough offense, and I think Auburn's going to be flummoxed.
Yeah. Franz Beard, Shoney and Valdosta. A boxing fight might possibly be rigged. Say it ain't so. Come on, forget about it. There's nothing involved with boxing. I mean, just like some games aren't rigged by the NCAA. I don't know. Or NFL games. You make the Super Bowl. You think some Hollywood screenwriters wrote the ending to that for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce? I agree. All right, Franz. Can Auburn do it? Dave's right. They're so good at home, and if Connect is on, it's hard to beat them.
Here's what has to happen with Auburn. Janai Broome has to show up big. And I mean, when I mean big, if he goes off for, say, 20 and 12 or better, Auburn could win against anybody. Yeah. The problem is when teams figure out a way to get him slowed down. He makes defenses collapse. And Auburn's got 3-point shooters that if you give them time to order from takeout, and get it delivered, and they got the little table there, they can take a sip of their drink, and then to say, oh, it's time to shoot. If you give them that much time, they can make shots. Yeah. But for that to happen, people have to collapse on Janai Broome. And he is the key to everything they do. here's where Tennessee's so good. They've got, as we saw at the end of the half the other night, Vescovi hasn't even shot this year, and he's their best 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
If he has sacrificed so much of his game to make Dalton Connect better. But if Dalton Connect can't get it done, you defend him, they'll cut Vescovi loose. They've got more what Dave's heard me say this. I think you guys have too. They have more than one way to beat you at Tennessee.
Yep. Right.
And that's what makes them so good.
Yeah.
That's what makes UConn so good. They've got more ways to beat you than anybody else. That's why they're going to be so good. It's why Kansas is going to be really dangerous, and Kentucky. You take these teams. You take a team that you can, like Perdon't, when you can stick your when you can figure it when you can stop Zach Edey, they have nothing at all. You can stop Donovan Clingan at UConn, and it's like, and your next thing, what are you trying to tell us? I mean, that's kind of the way they are.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is with Tennessee this year. That's why they're so good.
Yeah. And you know what, Dave, along those lines, when Dalton Connect, though, you go back, the pivotal moment was when Tennessee lost at Thompson Bowling Arena in Knoxville, 63-59 to South Carolina. Dalton Connect had 31 points. The rest of the team had 28 points. If he gets help from his supporting cast, nobody's going to beat Tennessee. Nobody beats our prices. I just don't think that it happens. So what team is Tennessee the most like nationally?
I think UConn. I think UConn. On game day, I'm so happy game day is going to be in Tuscaloosa this Saturday. But Danny Hurley, I guess he's Dan now because his son's Danny. But he was on game day and he talked about their process after they lost to Creighton, and Creighton just lightning in a bottle. They just couldn't miss from downtown.
Yeah.
And he their film session with the team after that lasted for hours. And it wasn't just the coaches watching the film, it was the entire team. And they talked about every defensive lapse, every offensive mistake, and they just dwelled on it because they're like, okay, this can't happen again. This can't happen once we move into March, because once we get to the tournament, if this happens once, we're out. And I don't think it will. And I really think Tennessee and UConn are alike that way. That there's I think back to the tournament last year, I knew San Diego State was going to beat Alabama. I just knew it because Alabama plays one way and San Diego State knows how to take them out of that and make them uncomfortable. It's hard to make Tennessee uncomfortable. It's hard to make UConn uncomfortable. I'm basically echoing Franz's point.
Well, the one thing I noticed in both of y'all, Coach Hurley at UConn, Dan Hurley, the seriousness that they take basketball in the Northeast and in the ACC is like we do football in the South. And I mean, it is, Nick Saban's got Mercedes dealerships. He's got businesses everywhere. Even though he's retired, he's still got those businesses. That's the difference. But it's the guard play. Franz, you're writing better every year. I mean, Brendan's right. You just Dave and everybody, subscribe to GatorBaitMedia.com. Gator or not, you've got to be reading what he is putting out. And Buddy Martin and Lauren Meadows and and watch this Buddy Martin show. We've got to get back to true grit journalism. Let me say for the record, First Amendment, free speech is absolutely revered on this show. We don't drink the Kool-Aid. There are no restraints. We don't tell people what to think. Franz, you and Dave have basketball savant minds. Tell me why a school in the SEC, top to bottom, can't have guard play like you see at Marquette or UConn or Creighton. And by the way, I've got a new nickname for Edey at Purdue. Remember UConn Cornelius? Look what the Bumble can do. He put the star on the top of the tree. The Bumble, that's Edey. He can dunk it. That's about all he can do. But Franz Beard, respond to what I said, because the coffee's kicking in and my ADD's kicking in, and I'm all over the place.
I'll give you two answers to that.
Yeah.
Reed Shepard and Rob Dillingham.
Yep.
Zion Pullen and Walter Clayton Jr.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'll put those two guard combinations against anything anybody else has anywhere. But that's not, here's where UConn is so good. They've got good guards. I mean, Tristan Newton is leading the team in rebounding, and he's a 6'5" wing guard. But that's because they put there's so much attention on Klingon. When he's in the game, there is so much attention to Klingon, and there's so much attention to Alex Caravan that it allows the guards like Cam Spencer to get in there and get rebounds, like Tristan Newton to do it. They play the total team game. And that's what, if you're going to make it work in the NCAA, in today's NCAA, you can't be the one trick pony. You better have alternatives that say, and this is why, you look at what happened with Alabama against Florida. For the longest time, they were struggling because they couldn't get Mark Sears going. When they got Mark Sears going at the end, they ended up pulling the game out with a little help from Joe Lindsay. By the way, I have sent an email to Greg Sankey requesting an MRI of Joe Lindsay because I believe that he has swallowed too many whistles, and I think they'll find him.
Franz Beard. Oh, Franz. Hey, look, Brendan, I think Brendan's got something he wants to add to this conversation. Dave Tompkins, Beaufort, South Carolina. This is Savant Monday.
Speaking of loyal fan and people that have been with us forever, this guy, number 2 or 3 when we started the whole thing? Ladies and gentlemen, the number 1 fan of this show, Dr. David Arnoff, has stopped in on his way from vacationing down south on his way back to somewhere in the Panhandle, and he stopped by to have lunch with me today. David Arnoff.
Hey, love you. Thank you. You're in Panama City there, right up on the Panhandle, or as we call it, L.A. Lower Alabama. Dr. Arnoff,
the Redneck Riviera.
That's right. And and a Yankees down there when they say, "Hey, let's go to the ocean today." No, we're going to the Gulf. Drop and give me 20, son. Dr. Arnoff, you're a lifelong Gator. I bet I'm going to say that. Yes. How fired up are you about what Todd Golden's doing at Florida? Because, Bruce Pearl talked about him when he got that job. And Florida, I always say this, not just to placate y'all, but you got everything in the world there. To borrow the great line from Ernie McCracken in Kingpin when he described the bowling future of one Roy Captain Hook Munson, you're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels. How excited are you about the Orange and Blue Bloods?
Oh, I think we're very excited. He's a perfect fit, I think, for the university, for the state as a whole. Looks like a great guy, putting a great team together. We're going to get back down to the times when Eugene, the Duncan Machine McDowell, was running the courts.
I love it. I love it, man.
Let me throw this at you guys. This is how bad a weekend it was at Florida. We start out with a perfect 10 by Leanne Wong to beat LSU on the final rotation in gymnastics. LSU was ranked number 2. Florida knocks them off. Track and field finishes. It's an off year. We only finished second in both men and women in the indoors. Swim team won its 12th straight men's championship, second straight women's. Softball team had a really rough time of it. 5 games, 66-1 was the final carnage. We had a perfect game and a no-hitter. And the other 2 girls, gosh, they struggled with a 1-hitter and a 2-hitter. So it was just a really bad weekend for that. And the baseball team scored 34 runs in 3 games. to beat whoever. I can't even remember who it was. Columbia, that's who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Arkansas won the men's and women's track and field national
Yes, they
championships.
did.
I mean, look, track and field is your insurance policy for every sport you play. Speed, plyometrics, power, and I love track and field. Dave, you know, when you lived in Europe, when you were in Kaiserslautern deploying cruise missiles, and you know, in the late 80s after you graduated from West Point, track and field meets will be on TV in Europe like college football, college basketball games every weekend. And I think that's cool. People in America, we don't appreciate really what we have, but we've got incredible track and field. We ought to recognize these people. Call them Olympic sports or whatever you want to. I love them all if they keep score. So I just thought I would say
absolutely.
that.
I was just thinking about father-son combinations, and you know, the Archie and the Manning boys. But I think in the history of American sports, there's never been a father and a son who had the exact same game quite like Reed Shepherd and his dad Jeff. I mean, watching Reed play, it's like all of a sudden it's the late 90s again. Tubby Smith and his dad's out there. I mean, they play the exact same game. It's fun. It's fun to watch the do-over that is Reed Shepherd.
Yeah, family traditions. Yeah,
he is good. Hey, real quick, guys. How many of y'all noticed that the NCAA, the casket was delivered to the front door in Indianapolis? Everybody should, should climb in, because the NCAA is over and done with now. The federal judge in Tennessee gives a restraining order, and I guarantee you the NCAA has got to be smart enough, but they probably aren't. If they oppose that restraining order, they're going to get beaten in court, because they set up no guidelines for NIL, and now they're trying to enforce guidelines they put in after the fact. They're going to lose. So as we know it, the NCAA is dead. And, the only thing we're waiting on now is for an official funeral of it. What better happen in a hurry is a new organization formed with a commissioner, with rules, and the NCAA presidents, the presidents of these schools, need to understand this is a business undertaking. Go promote, gender equality courses, everything like that. That will get half your student body a bachelor's that won't amount to anything. Yeah. Please do that and leave the athletics to people who know what they're doing. If they do
I want to say
we'll
this.
Be good.
Yeah, and you're right. We've been saying this for a while. The respirator's on, the priest is in the room, and the kinfolk are being asked to come to the bedside of the NCAA. Tony Barnhart said here. Yeah, that's right. The doctor's in the house. But you think about what Tony Barnhart said. We've got to have an officials organization. Our friend Steve Shaw, the coordinator of NCAA officials, I love having him on the show. And he said they'll just have a private officials organization. But you're right. Again, I'm not an attorney, but our attorney, Jack Turner, the barrister in residence of Sidelines, graduate of the Hugo Black College of Law in Tuscaloosa. He's my personal attorney. He's right. The NCAA is only concerned with antitrust laws. That's what they have to be concerned with. And Dave, you think about this. The NCAA, when they're out of the way, do we want to have one commissioner or a group of people? But my recommendation is for the meetings, like in the Army, you remember this, a stand-up table with a round top on there. Everybody stands around. Those meetings will take 10 minutes or less. It's like the weekly staff meetings we have with Brendan and Buddy Martin and me. Buddy's like, all right, here's the deal. We're going to keep these things to 15 minutes or less. He usually take less than 10 because you know what? It's quick. You got an agenda. But Dave, Nick Saban,
I
Rick
think one
Neuheisel,
commissioner,
Urban Meyer, do it.
Yeah, I think one commissioner, but a little bit of a cautionary tale. In my opinion, Roger Goodell has too much power and authority. I think there needs to be one commissioner, but there needs to be some sort of governance structure so that commissioner is beholden to a governance group and doesn't have absolute authority as Roger Goodell seems to have. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah,
you've got to make
like
it so
that.
you have a commissioner at the top who has veto power. Okay, you have a commissioner overall, and then like football has its commissioner. Okay, basketball has its, and then you have a commissioner at the top with veto power and a contract with term limits on the commissioner at the top. Now, if you want to make the commissioners so they rotate, so a football guy is in charge for 2 years, a basketball guy 2 years, and rotated like that, fine. But you got to have term limits on the guy at the top, and you got to have enforceable rules with penalties that are harsh enough. You know, it's like this. If you cheat, and let's say you cheat on, go out and buy yourself a new quarterback and whatever like this, and you've got rules that say you can't, then fine. You're going to get fined $50 million.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
The
Well,
boosters won't come up except for the Aggies. Now, you know, the Aggies will say, well, damn, we got to pump much more petroleum here, don't we? But other than that, everybody else, that will get their attention. And you have to have rules that get people's attention.
One rule you could do to slow down the Aggies and the Longhorns, the Permian Basin, and I know this from my business in West Texas, in part of New Mexico, average 4.2 million barrels per day. And 2/3 of that money from the state every year goes to Texas, 1/3 to Texas A&M. So they're spending effectively taxpayers' money. All right. That's if that changes, that's going to change a lot with Texas and Texas A&M. Just something to think about. Okay. But man, we've run out of time. Dadgummit. Awesome show. Dave Tompkins, anytime you can come on, love having you on. Franz Beard, Tony Barnhart, Brendan, Dr. David Arnoff, thank you so much for watching the shows and listening to the shows, because I see your comments all the time, and we appreciate it more than you can imagine. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, people. We have the best guests, the best executive producer, and sponsors. Support them all and go out and make something great happen today. And happy birthday. And look, smash that subscribe button on YouTube, okay? Hit that thing, subscribe. Tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, everybody about
I want to go to the
Sidelines Sports Network.
Go to the Derby and let's get more Big Ten teams in the tournament.
Yeah. Somebody say 50.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
And Notre Dame, by the way, I like this. Notre Dame will want their own commissioner. We'll just leave that for tomorrow.
Exactly.
Bye, everybody. We're out of here.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shopp's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.